My earlier segment talked about CNN devolving into prop comedy and how the media was praising Andrew Cuomo of New York while consistently smearing Ron DeSantis of Florida. There's also Kristi Noem of South Dakota. The media has repeatedly bashed the Republican states that did everything right and prop up New York's Cuomo when this is the epicenter of the crisis in the world. Now we see this story from the New York Post, a very bold front page from the New York Post. End New York City's lockdown now. The Big Apple is dying. Its streets are empty. Tens of thousands have been plunged into poverty. Our leaders have no plans, no answers. New Yorkers have already learned to socially distance. Businesses can't adjust. The elderly and infirm can continue to be isolated. It needs to end now. Spicy. That's the front page of the New York Post, and the story opens by highlighting. Last Friday morning, some 3,500 New Yorkers lined up at a Catholic church in Queens to receive free food hours before it even opened, according to the NYPD. Catholic Charities has reported a 200% increase in demand over the past month and a half. We've seen the videos. We've seen the photos of thousands of people lining up at food banks, desperate for food. New York businesses are collapsing. 100,000 plus businesses will never reopen again. Some estimates say maybe 40% of small businesses will never reopen again. We are already past that point. The other day I made a video talking about my dissatisfaction with the state I live in. I'm in New Jersey. I'm in South Jersey, the Philly area. The governor is saying we can't fully reopen to a new normal until there's a vaccine. I'm not going to wait a year and a half, 2 years. I'm going to relocate my business. And that's what we're looking at doing. I can't tell people in New York what they should or shouldn't do. I don't live there. But I can tell you the sentiment in New York is boiling over. A lot of people seem to believe that the Democrats, these Democratic states, are enforcing these lockdowns in an effort to prevent Trump from doing rallies, to maybe hurt him. I don't necessarily think so. I mean, maybe that's their intent. But I'll tell you this, man, this is going to shock the system. And you will see people vote Republican faster than they've ever voted in their lives. Maybe some people who've never voted before. Why? Look at this other story. Lockdown is literally bringing us to our knees. Coalition of 300 NYC small business owners signed petition to reopen as Cuomo and Blasio keep city shut down into a 10th week and refuse to say when it might end. Oh, they've extended it already. It's 15 days, slow the spread. Now your business was destroyed completely. These people are not happy. Do you think they're going to come out and now vote for the Democratic Party again? I don't think so. We've got interesting stories popping up. Apparently, there's like a new Oxford study suggesting Trump will lose because of the economy. But do you think voters are going to blame the economy on Trump when Trump is saying open things up? When these business owners in New York are saying we need to reopen, they're agreeing with Trump. I don't think these forecasts take into account the cultural issues that are happening around us. But I do want to read the story from the New York Post, give you their opinion, and then we'll talk about it. They write, by prolonging the coronavirus shutdown long after its core mission was accomplished, Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio have plunged tens of thousands of New Yorkers into poverty. It needs to end now. In mid-March, we were told we have to endure a lockdown to ensure that hospitals didn't get overrun. We did. The hospitals were not overwhelmed. We turned the Javits Center into a hospital. We didn't need it. We brought in a giant Navy ship to treat New Yorkers. We didn't need it. We were told we were moments away from running out of ventilators. We weren't. And now the United States has built so many, we are giving them away to other countries. That's all true. Meanwhile, the Big Apple is dying. Its streets are empty. The bars and jazz clubs, restaurants, and coffee houses sit barren. Beloved haunts, storied rooms. Perfect slice joints are shuttered, many for good. The sweat equity of countless small business owners is evaporating. Instead of getting people back to work, providing for their families, our mayor talks about a Fantasyland New Deal for the post-coronavirus era. In fact, this is a little bit wrong. Many businesses have reopened in New York, and the mayor responded by threatening them because people wanted to go out, they wanted to drink, they wanted to celebrate, they wanted to hang out with their friends. They do not want to be locked in their homes indefinitely. So partly wrong. But yes, it's true. Many of these businesses will never reopen. New York City is in dire straits. Another segment I talked about, Andrew Cuomo's worst fear. I say worst fear, I'm being hyperbolic, but one of his greatest fears has been realized. It was last year he said, God forbid if the rich leave, because they had already been facing a budget deficit. They needed the wealthy citizens to pay higher taxes so that they would have the money they needed to run the city. The MTA, the metro system, the subways in New York, falling apart in complete collapse. The Amazon deal was going to help that. Thanks to AOC, that's gone. Now, 420,000 of the wealthier citizens of New York have left. By some estimates, around 40% of the wealthy are gone. Many of them will probably come back. Many of them never will. They've left for good. They don't need to live there. They're people of means. They have money. They can get up and go wherever they want. It's the poor people who are stuck holding the bag in New York City. And many of these small business owners are not wealthy. Many of them make just enough to get by on a middle-class median wage, median salary. They've been shut down. Meanwhile, the wealthy people with the buffers are doing just fine, hopping off to the Hamptons, to Connecticut, to Boston. They got nothing to worry about. They got money in the bank. Meanwhile, these businesses are on their knees begging. Let's read some more. Open the city. This is what they say. This is the New York Post, okay? Open the city. All of it right now. Broadway shows, beaches, Yankees games, the schools, the top of the freaking Empire State Building, everything. New Yorkers have already learned to socially distance. Businesses can adjust. The elderly and infirm can continue to be isolated. And they show this photo of social distance circles in a park. For 2 months, we have waited for Cuomo and de Blasio to tell us how this ends. Where is ex-mayor Michael Bloomberg with his alleged army of tracers the governor told us was the key to reopening? And why did he hand that responsibility over to Bloomberg, whom nobody elected anyway? And why is the press ragging on Trump and DeSantis and Nome when New York is collapsing? I'm adding that by the way. They didn't write this, but they go on to say, what the hell is going on? Is anybody in charge of the situation, or are we just left with the governor and his talking head brother arguing on CNN about which of the two Ma loves best? Who cares? Yes. And Chris Cuomo pulling up a prop, an oversized novelty cotton swab to mock his brother's nose. That's what you can expect. Bread and circuses. You live in a city that is in dire straits with thousands of people lining up at a church, desperate for food. Their businesses being shuttered. 300 businesses begging the city. The front page of one of the most prominent New York papers saying it needs to reopen. And what do you get? You get the clowns on TV throwing bread and giving you the circus. They don't want you to be upset, but they're not going to help you. They're going to distract you. They call what Donald Trump does a distraction. They're always distracting from the crisis in this country. But Trump is the president, not a governor, and the governors control what they do. Now, Trump has tried to claim he has absolute authority. He does not. He does not. 10th Amendment. The states are the ones responsible for the lockdowns, and the Republican states seemingly have done fine. They've had their problems, but while the media just attacked relentlessly South Dakota, Florida, and other states, nothing bad happened. I mean, bad things happened for sure, but I mean, it's not as bad as they said it would be. Meanwhile, New York is in shambles. We'll see how this turns out with the wealthy leaving, because that's what Cuomo was concerned about. They go on to say in late April, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp defied experts by opening his state. The Atlantic magazine, once a serious publication that should now come with a stick of stale bubblegum, accused him of engaging in human sacrifice. You want to guess what happened? Guess. Come on, take a guess. Instead of the predicted spike in deaths, the number of cases of coronavirus and associated deaths declined. We should always consider that we are led by idiots. As one of my friends likes to remind me, Cuomo and de Blasio have no plan. There is not a single question about when New York can get back to normal to which they have a straight answer. Not one. They cash their taxpayer paycheck while immiserating the rest of us. If our elected leaders won't save the world's greatest city from a slow death by economic strangulation, then the people of New York must do it themselves. Barbers, tailors, nail salons, reporting goods stores. This is the New York Post saying this. YouTube, I'm not saying this. This is bold. Movie theaters and others should open their doors while maintaining social distancing, of course, and dare the state to shut them down. Wow. I in no way advocate for like everyone rushing out and doing these. I absolutely advocate for the governors to back down, for the police officers to stop pushing unconstitutional decree. It's not the law. I absolutely am in favor of the state legislatures in various states shutting down these governors, like in Wisconsin. It's a bit much, but what can I say, man? I have my opinion. I have a line, but some people, they go further. If the New York Post wants to assert this, we're talking about one of the most prominent newspapers in the country making this statement. You want to talk about mainstream? This is mainstream. Like it, you love it or hate it. They say our politicians serve by our consent. We don't run our businesses or lives or live our lives by their consent. The suggestion to the contrary is an affront to Americanism. It has been a long time since this country, let alone this city, really had to deal with the prospect of mass starvation. This isn't about the stock market. It's about parents putting their kids to bed hungry and hoping tomorrow there will be something for them to eat if they get up at 4:30 a.m. and get in line at a food bank. We did what we were asked. We flattened the freaking curve. There is no longer any reasonable justification for the government to deprive us of our livelihoods. And our rights aren't the government's to grant or take away. They belong to us. The free grant of nature and the God of nature. We're Americans. We're more than that, New Yorkers. A very, very angry op-ed. And this is written by David Marcus for the New York Post. Front page story. Maybe people don't agree. I think they do. I think they do because we see stories like this. 300 small business owners have signed a petition. Here's what the Daily Mail reports. A coalition of 300 small New York City businesses are demanding that the city be reopened as it nears its 10th week of lockdown. The coalition, called Reopen NY, announced their campaign at a press conference where they said they were being played by the government for not being allowed to do business, while retail giants like Home Depot and Target are, because they have been deemed essential. Boom. There it is. This is what you are getting. You want to look, apparently some Oxford study came out. Maybe I'll do a segment on it later, claiming that Donald Trump is going to lose because no president wins in an economic crisis. But what about a manufactured crisis? Manufactured by mayors like de Blasio, governors like Cuomo, and Whitmer, not by Donald Trump, who's advocated for a reopening of the economy. So sure, maybe the American people are mindless drones. Maybe they just vote based on, do I have money or don't, or don't I? Or maybe they understand what caused the problem in the first place. We all agreed we're going to lock things down. And now many people are saying, okay, it's been 2.5 months. Do we get to reopen yet? Donald Trump says yes. Cuomo says no. DeSantis says yes. De Blasio says no. So we can see which political faction is encouraging this. Now, look, I'm not telling you that every single person wants things to reopen. I'm telling you that there are a large group of people who live in urban centers who are defying their Democratic politicians, people they probably voted for. Here's what they go on to say. They are the first to publicly put pressure on Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo to reopen after patiently watching the infection and death numbers decline for weeks while bleeding money from their businesses. Others had been hesitant to call for a reopening, but with no end date in sight to the current closures, and while other states are with more concerning figures get back to work without causing a spike, many in New York City are now saying enough is enough. More than 16,000 have died, and there have been more than 191,000 cases in New York City. It was the epicenter of the epicenter, with 800 people dying every day at its worst. But now, fewer than 100 people are being admitted to hospitals on a daily basis. There is a good counterpoint to that, however. The reason the number has gone down could be argued is because of the lockdown. However, at this point, I think, I'm gonna say it straight up. This is a bannable offense. My understanding is YouTube actually says you can't say this stuff, but I'm gonna tell you the studies have shown that the lockdown may have been bad. And how about the fact that the states that didn't lock down are doing better than New York City? Perhaps the lockdown was the wrong thing to do. Social distancing was right. And maybe at this point, sunlight really is the best disinfectant. The science says so. But hey, don't take it from me, man. Take it from the New York Post. Take it from the Daily Mail. These are mainstream, very well-known publications. Of course, they're considered to be more right-leaning, heavily criticized as being tabloids. But there are people who are protesting. There's a photo of them right here. It's not made up. Here's the photo. It says the Reopen NY Coalition announced their campaign on Wednesday afternoon at a press conference. More than 300 businesses signed the coalition demanding to be allowed to reopen on May 28th. Are we being played? Are we fighting a pandemic, or are we just being used as pawns by our politicians? Why is there a double standard? If Home Depot can sell flooring, why can't a small business sell flooring? If Target can sell clothing, why can't we? Yeah, why can't we? It makes no sense. It makes no sense that a massive big box store, that a massive corporate chain, Walmart, Target, are essential. Why? Because they sell food. Is that it? That's what I've been saying. Make sure that if you run a business, retail, you get a license to sell some food. You get one little rack, you put some cans of baked beans. They're good for a couple of years. And then no matter what happens, well, we're essential. We sell baked beans. Is that all you need? So the small businesses that want to provide for their communities have been shuttered, and many of them permanently. And the people are getting fed up with it. The city has low enough infection and death rates, but is being kept shut because, according to officials, it needs another 3% of its hospital beds to come free, 4% of its ICU beds. And the city needs to hire more contact tracers. As of Wednesday, more than 1,000 had been onboarded, city officials told DailyMail.com. But they refused to specify how many more were needed. They gave a tentative goal date of June 1st. Okay, you know what? I think we get the point in this one. Let's talk a little bit about the end of NYC. I don't think it's the complete and total end. There will be a resurgence. But if 40% of businesses are expected to be shuttered permanently, what does that say for New York and all its bodegas and cafes, all of its small restaurants that have now been closed for 2.5 months, whose food has mostly spoiled? They've thrown it all out. Now, of course, many of these shops are doing delivery. But how many of them have actually been able to maintain, a delivery? How many of them have closed permanently? The numbers I've seen have suggested maybe 40%. So in a city like New York City, it may be. I live there. You walk down a street and you will see tiny restaurants, many, many, many of them. One place, I used to go to B&H a lot over on 32nd, and I think it's on maybe 8th or something in Manhattan. It's a camera shop. And there's a Thai food place. There's an Indian food place. There's an excellent chicken wing place. And they're very, very small. They're not big chains. You walk in, you can barely sit down. You're squeezed in there and you get your meal. New York, man, people are stacked on top of each other. But I can only imagine that many of these businesses, some of them have their phones ringing off the hook. Many of them probably just shut down. Many of their employees probably couldn't come to work, didn't want to come to work, were scared about getting sick. Many of them didn't have the business they needed to stay open. I ordered delivery recently. So I'm in South Jersey. I'm not in New York. I ordered delivery recently. I got a flyer in the mail. It was a pizza shop. And I said, we've been locked up. We haven't been able to go out, hang out or anything. So let's order food. And I did. And when I called the company, it's kind of sad. It was almost begging me to order more. And I did. I ordered as much as I could. I didn't want to be wasteful, but I was just like, we're going to get a couple pizzas. But are you sure? We've got a lot more things. We've got these things. And I know upselling usually happens, but I ordered a couple things and it was almost begging. It was almost like, please order more. And so I ended up ordering this ridiculously massive order because, are you sure? We've got all this stuff. And I think it's because it's going to spoil. They know they're going to lose it. They knew that they had all this stuff. They had these jalapeno poppers and cheese sticks and pizza and all the sides, all the wings, the mushrooms, zucchinis, whatever, onion rings. It's all going to go in the trash. So the best thing they could do is just be like, well, we can give you a deal. We can get you more. Oh, it's a big package. I kind of felt kind of bad. I wonder what's going on in New York. I know I did talk to one restaurant. This was back when I was in LA. They said their phone wouldn't stop ringing off the hook. That people were like, we want food. We want it now. And they were swamped. I think when it comes to what we're going to see with a lot of these businesses, the internet is going to have a profound effect on the success of some small businesses when it comes to food delivery, and when it and will also contribute to their destruction. Now, I just gave you a story about food delivery, but let's be real. Some of these small businesses are just skate shops. They sell clothing, they sell hats. Some of them might sell specialized tools. They don't do delivery. They can't do curbside pickup on a lot of these things. Many of them are gone for good. You go to Target, you go to Walmart. What do you get? Got all your tools, got all your clothes, got all your food, got your TVs, got your video games. And they're open, and their profits are booming. Walmart, 74% up. New York, is my understanding, is mostly small business. I think this is going to be the transformation that we'll see in our country coming out of this and the other side of the coronavirus pandemic will shock you. I think there's going to be a lot of smaller businesses in more rural areas that are flourishing. Amazon is going to be bigger, more power to the corporations. New York will be crippled for a long time. I think this might result in an exodus from New York City. There's also potential for an inversion that there's going to be, with the demand dropping, you'll find a bunch of businesses closed. Then the landlords who own those buildings are going to say, we'll rent it out for whatever. The rent costs might start dropping because the businesses have been destroyed, and it might slowly start recovering. New businesses might emerge. But it's not fair to those, and the blood, sweat, and tears they put into those businesses, they're gone now. And, I get it. It's the virus's fault for the most part. But again, I defer to Florida. I look at Ron DeSantis, the success they've had. I look at South Dakota. I understand they're not New York City. But I wonder what New York City did wrong that destroyed, New York State did wrong that destroyed the city. Well, I hope these people can figure things out. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. at timcast.net. Check it out. It's my main channel. Many of you may be familiar with it, but go to timcast.net. You'll see it, and I'll see you there at 4.